Trish and Rob McGregor welcome you to a place where all kinds of phenomena flourish. Voices whisper ancient secrets, signs and symbols are abundant. UFOs, ETs, ghosts, and even the dead move about freely. Here we meet authors, researchers, and investigators of the mysterious, the strange, and of the inexplicable anomalies that surround us. Step out of the everyday world and take a journey into the mystical underground.
Hit record. And we will start in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Mystical Underground. Thank you for joining us. This is Rob McGregor.
And Trish McGregor.
And our producer and tech magician, John Posey. You can go to themysticalunderground.com where we make regular blog posts and where you can find out about our books. Among the nonfiction books are Phenomena, Harnessing Your Psychic Abilities, The Secrets of Spirit Communication, Sensing the Future, and Aliens in the Backyard. Our newest book is called The Shift, Reports from the Mystical Underground. Trish's latest novel is White Crows, and Rob's latest novel is called Tulpas.
Our guest today is Philip Mary, the author of 9 Keys of Synchronicity, a book that grew out of his PhD research in synchronicity. He holds a PhD in that. Dr. Mary is a British native who lives in Singapore. He has led workshops and leadership training for more than 4 decades and has addressed major world organizations in 61 countries, although I think it's 63 now, right, Philip?
63 now. Yes, you're right.
Okay,
So
yeah.
Philip is the only person with a grounded theory PhD in synchronicity and leadership. We love talking with this guy. Welcome.
Yeah. Welcome, Philip.
Good to see you. You keep inviting me back, and I worry I'll run out of things to say, but I'm very grateful
Right, yeah.
to
I
be
think
in the best network in the world.
so. Yeah, you've been on 2 or 3 times before. So
I think this is the 4th time.
yeah, I think
It's the
you're.
4th time.
Yeah.
I think you're our most regular guest.
You could tell we love talking to you, Philip.
Okay. At what point in your life did you decide that coincidence that were occurring in your life were more than simply coincidence? That what triggered that shift?
Wow, straight into it, right, Rob?
Yeah, right. Good morning.
I was looking to warm up. At what point? That's a great question. I've never been asked that before, but I think I've been aware all of my life, Rob, that stuff happens to us. You know, and in reality, synchronicity, you know, I like to keep it simple. You want something, your life needs something, and it turns up without you doing anything, or you can predict that it's going to come and then it comes. So I really consciously started discussing it and thinking about it and researching it 15 years ago.
Mhm.
But once I did that, I was able to look back in my life and I realized that the first time it happened to me was when I was 9 years old.
Really?
And so when you kind of get interested in synchronicity, you begin to reevaluate many things that happen. And when I was 9 years old, I was living in the west of England, and my dad was a Christian minister, and we used to move regularly. And it was the time of the year when we were due to move, and we used to get the marching orders, right, by letter. And so I at that time, I remember I was in a geography class, and we looked at a book. I can even see the picture now, a book with a picture of Huddersfield, which is a town in the north of England. And I said, I think we're going to move to Huddersfield. I wonder if we'll move to Huddersfield. The following day, the letter came, and the letter said, "Dear Mr. Mary, we're glad to tell you you're moving to Huddersfield."
All right.
Now, did you
So
mention that to your parents? About your feeling?
no, I didn't actually. I think when I really realized that, Trish, they'd already passed.
Oh,
Wow.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
So to me, I like to keep synchronicity simple. You know, there's a lot of new age stuff and new terminology which
Mm-hmm.
really people don't understand in their day-to-day life. To
Yeah.
me, my focus is there is this energy around us with which we can connect, and that energy contains answers to questions that we have in our lives, and it will bring to us sometimes the things that we're thinking about. So
Mm-hmm.
I like to keep it that simple, Trish, Rob, because I think that's really what it's all about. Don't make it too complicated. Otherwise,
Yeah.
people think they need a
Yeah, I
PhD to understand.
agree.
Right. You told us in one of the other podcasts you were on a story about you needed $15,000. Can you repeat
Oh, I
that
love
one,
that
please?
story.
That's a
You
good
want that
one.
one again? Okay.
Yes, that's a great story.
Well, I mean, there I was running my business in Singapore. I've been in Singapore for 33 years. And I was looking at my financial records for the month. And I said to myself, I need $15,000 to close the books for this month. That
Wow.
was 10 minutes before 4 here in Singapore. 4 o'clock, the phone rang, and it was a colleague in Holland, Netherlands, and he said, Philip, we need to run a seminar last minute in Beijing next week. Can you go? So I looked
Wow.
at my diary. I was able to go. And then Fons, my colleague, said, the other thing that you'll be glad about, it's good money, it's $15,000.
Nice.
So 10
God.
minutes before 4, I need $15,000. 4 o'clock, here's $15,000.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, that's
That
a
is
good
great.
one.
So many
So
people have asked me
I
about that.
like to, I like to make this, that's why I'm saying it's practical.
Uh-huh.
A lot of people say I'm connecting with my soul's purpose and my divine guidance and all the rest of it. I'm not against that, but synchronicity also brings us practical stuff.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
And I
so many
think,
people have said, ask Philip how he did that.
I wish I knew. I wish I
Yeah.
knew. Well, I do know. I do know. Um, for my PhD, I kind of was looking not just at stories. For my PhD, I interviewed people who'd had synchronicity happen to them and asked the simple question, what do you think facilitates synchronicity? Meaning, what was
Mhm.
going on that you think facilitated synchronicity? And my nine keys book gives 9 keys that came from those questions.
Hmm.
Um, but as I say, I like it to be, if synchronicity isn't about helping and guiding in everyday things, your life, your relationships, your career, then what's it all about?
Yeah.
So to me, that's one of the fundamental things.
Now, is that
About
how you teach these leadership courses that you're doing?
I begin with my, uh, it's called the 9 Keys Masterclass, Trish. I begin with asking people, have you ever had stuff happen to you that really gave you answers to questions? And everybody puts their hands up.
Huh.
Answers to questions without you doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
And people put their hands up and begin to share stories, because you have to set a climate at the beginning of any talk or training
Mm-hmm.
that gets people comfortable to talk about these things.
Mhm.
Because often people are not comfortable, especially in a leadership situation, Trish. What one CEO I spoke to talked wax lyrical about how intuition and synchronicity helped him make his decisions.
Ah,
But he
nice.
said, after I talked to him, he said, one thing you must promise me, don't tell my boss.
Oh,
Don't
God.
tell my colleagues, don't tell my boss, because they don't teach this stuff on your MBA.
Mhm.
Right.
And I think that's why we're in an exciting time. And you, Trish and Rob, you've been the foremost people in this for many years. You were there way before any of us. But it's about helping people be able to accept what happens to them day to day.
Uh-huh.
And if you make it too spiritual and too connected to, language that is not so accessible,
Mm-hmm.
they clam up. So my role, which is why I call my work synchronicity solutions,
Oh, I like that.
meaning how do you find solutions in your life through synchronicity? We need our brain, we need our logic, and leaders that I work with are happy to deal with logic, but not so happy to deal with this thing, which is heart, emotion, spirit, whatever you want to call it.
Tell us about Winston Churchill's unusual synchronicity.
Okay,
This is a good story.
I like this story. Winston Churchill, when he was a student, wanted to go to the next level academic institution. And in order to get accepted, one of the things that they needed to do was actually talk about particular countries. And I've forgotten the country now, Trish. You've put me on the
Sorry.
too early in the morning.
Yeah, really.
He actually drew out of a hat New Zealand.
Huh.
I think this is the story, and then decided to talk more about study New Zealand. And then the following morning, when he went for the exam, New Zealand was the one that was drawn out of the hat. And so he got all the answers right about New Zealand and was able to actually go to that academic institution, which was fundamentally responsible for him to get to a higher intellectual level. I think that's the story. I think I've garbled that a little bit. But
It's hard sometimes to remember the stuff you've written,
especially at seven in the morning.
Yeah, it's 7 in the morning.
Philip, you were just talking a little bit earlier about how the CEO had used intuition and synchronicity in his work, and he was kind of wary about letting others know about it. So before I met Trish, I was a journalist and worked for newspapers, and I would use synchronicity, or synchronicity would happen to me when I was reporting a story. I would, for example, I remember one time that I had 2 different stories I had to write, and one of them I had no idea where I was going to get a second source, because the editor always wanted a second source. And so I was working on the other story, and in the conversation, something came up where that person gave me the lead for the other story, and I was able to get it that way from the other story. But my editor, he was
awful.
Yeah, his name was Chuck, and the reporters quietly called him Up Chuck.
He's dead now.
Anyhow, he would see these things and want to know how I got that contact. And I couldn't say it was synchronicity, a coincidence. He would act like it was something I'd done, something unethical. That how I came up with that, But so he was always somewhat suspicious of me.
Yeah, and I think that's a spot on story, Rob, because we are all guided. One of the areas which my work pertains to is decision making in organizations and decision makings in leadership. I've not met anybody who doesn't say when they're making decisions, they have these promptings. And I think that the level at which people are comfortable or not comfortable to follow the intuitions and follow the promptings is the level at which they like to admit or don't talk about or talk about it. And, you know, the reality is you two know this better than anyone because you've been, I think, researching synchronicity longer than anybody in the world.
In the
Which is
world,
why,
I don't know about that.
well,
A long time, but
I've looked around. You've been writing about this stuff and popularizing this stuff, I think, longer than most people, which is why I love all the work that you do. And I think that we all know there are some people who are afraid to talk about the spirit.
Mhm.
You know, that famous phrase, in polite conversation, keep sex and politics out of it, and religion as well. Um, some people are uncomfortable to talk about spirit.
Right.
So that actually is there a lot with some organizations. But what I like to say is that the words are already in your vocabulary.
Mhm.
So when I'm working with a team and some people are skeptical about this stuff, you know, keep that out of organization, it doesn't belong here. I'd say, okay, that's interesting. Tell me, do you use the word team spirit? And they
And
said,
they
yeah,
said,
yeah,
yes.
we're all about, this is what we're doing here. We're building team spirit. I said,
Yeah,
okay,
right.
tell me what team means. Very easy. And then I'll say, tell me what spirit means. And they say, oh, I see what you mean. So there's stuff in our lives and stuff in our organizations that we're not quite clear about,
Mhm.
but it's becoming more and more important. I always say, if you take the word intuition, when you looked at leadership competencies 20 years ago, you would hardly ever see the word intuition. In today's world, for leadership assessments, qualities that are needed, intuition is there all the time.
Mhm.
Huh.
So we live in this great age where all of these issues and awarenesses are coming to the fore and need to be talked about.
Well, that's like,
So
years
when your
ago.
editor,
Oh, go ahead.
go
I'm
on,
sorry. No, go
well, I was
ahead.
just going to say, so Rob, when your editor wasn't comfortable, that's probably because they belong to a tradition of editors. And I used to work for Reuters, so I
Okay.
know
Right.
and respect a lot about journalists. They
Yeah.
probably belong to a tradition that says keep emotion out of it.
Right.
Just use logic.
Exactly. Yeah. And
Mhm.
actually, that editor ended up one day giving me an assignment that kind of changed my life and was a great synchronicity. And that was, he said, I want you to contact this program at Florida International University where
Hmm.
they are teaching English as a second language uh,
Okay.
to Cuban refugees and find out if here's a couple years has passed since the Mario boat lift where like 150,000 or so Cubans came to South Florida and and find out if they're learning English or they're just harboring in Little Havana. And
Right,
so
right.
I made contact with somebody there, and I set up an interview and sat in a class, and then interviewed the teacher,
Me.
and it was Trish.
Oh, you were the teacher, Trish. Okay.
I was.
She was the teacher, and oddly enough, after the interview, and as we're wrapping it up, she just said out of the blue, "Do you know what synchronicity is?" Can you believe that?
Well, you know, that's why I say it's a great topic, and we don't know everything. And I find it difficult when there are some people in the synchronicity world who say this is absolutely precisely what it is, because we don't
Yeah,
know.
that's not true.
You know,
Yeah.
science is developing in such a space that in 10 years' time it may disprove everything that we know. But I'm reminded, Rob, of another story around journalism
Okay.
and career progression. Um, so I was working for a business school in the UK,
Hmm.
and I said, I've done this for 4 years. I'm teaching teamwork and leadership. I'd now like to move into an organization, and I'd like to move into an organization in Asia. I had this kind
Hmm.
of sense of I want to go to, so sense, I mean, there's promptings. Who knows
Uh-huh.
why I wanted to go to Asia? And so I applied for a job with the Hong Kong Bank in Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
Very excited. I thought I'd get this teaching leadership and teamwork. They wrote back to me and said, Philip, you didn't get the job. And so I wrote and said, why? They said, you're too senior.
Oh, God.
So I'd got a fairly good position in the business school in the UK. And they said, this position is just for low-level supervisory training, and you'd soon get bored.
Hmm.
Huh.
And I said, no, I won't. Just bring me. I'll come. I'll be there in Hong Kong. Don't worry about that. Still, they said no. So pissed off, I went on holiday to Greece. I remember that. Came back, and there was a telegram. And the telegram said, Phil, this is Mr. Merry, not Phil, Mr. Merry, this is Reuters, the international news agency, and we'd like to interview you for the job of leadership development in Asia, based in Hong Kong.
Wow.
How'd they get your name?
I don't know to this day, Trish. I don't know.
Wow, that's incredible.
Through a headhunter, they told me. I got to Hong Kong. Sorry, I got to the interview. Interview went well. I was offered the job. So I ended up in the country, Hong Kong, or the territory, Hong Kong, that I'd previously been rejected for, saying I want to go there. And I ended up in a job that was so way much better, because the Hong Kong bank job would have been running training programs other people had designed. Whereas the Reuters job was setting up the whole of the leadership training function.
That
Across
is
the whole of
great.
Asia, and was much more aligned to who I am. Now, none of us can put our hand on our heart and say that's synchronicity. But I can say that's probably synchronicity, because it's mysterious, we don't really know. But I think it was synchronicity because it ended up with me a job that was much more closely aligned to my personality, meaning I like creative and new things, than I actually would have been in the Hong Kong bank job.
How
Philip,
did you?
I have a question. Oh, John's got a question.
Go ahead, John.
All right. So disembodied voice of John.
The voice of a God. The voice of a God.
Hi, John. Hi, John.
Hey, Philip. I love having you on. And so let me bring it all the way back down. This is not a life-altering decision that happened, but Rob and I had kind of gone back and forth on back in December of this year. I was in Philadelphia, not my hometown by a long shot. And I was watching Alabama, the University of Alabama, play the University of Georgia in the SEC championship game. At halftime, well, you had a question, but at halftime, game still, the game is not decided by a long shot, and I was like, you know what, I need something. I need a little something to drink to watch the second half of this game. So I go on Yelp, find a package store, and I leave the hotel, go to the package store. I turn the corner, or headed to the package store. I turn the corner where the package store is located. Directly across the street from the package store is a bar called the White Elephant, and there is a elephant head busting through the it is a fully and by the way, the University of Alabama's mascot is an elephant. And so I turn the corner and there's this elephant head across the street from the package store I'm going to. So I go to the package store, get my libations, and I walk back out and walk across the street, and I start taking pictures of it, and I go back and at that point I'm like, we're going to win the game because I'm in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and there's an elephant head
busting out of the wall
I love it.
across the street.
Oh,
So
Well,
it,
John, that's a great story. You see it, and that I love it because it takes synchronicity down to a basic level, right? In terms of stuff that you see that confirms what you think you want to be able to do.
Mhm.
Another. This is a fun. I always have fun with you two. What were you three?
We have fun with you too.
I'm currently in conversation with a man worth $6.7 billion.
My God.
And let me tell you about it. My hometown football team, Huddersfield, was recently last August bought by an American billionaire. And the American billionaire, I just love his style. He's close to the fans. He's not bought Huddersfield to be just a financial return for him. He cares about the club. He's 70 years old. He cares about the club. He goes to talk to fans. He invites fans for tea. And there's something I like about him because he's a great example of leadership, which is hands-on and listening to the ordinary people.
Mhm.
So I just had this, I saw an interview with him and I just had this thought, why don't I just write to him and say thank you? Because I really felt grateful to him. And so I looked around and found what I thought was his email. And I wrote to him and said, Kevin, because his name is Kevin Nagel, and he's actually the owner of some Sacramento football team that has done very well within the States. And I said, look, Kevin, I love the work that you're doing with my football team. I'm in the area of team development. If you need, I'm very happy to offer complimentary team building services if you're interested. That was it. Now I'm prompt. So I think we get prompted by our feelings. So as I'm watching this guy, his interview, he touches me with his human, compassionate, hands-on spirit. And so I said, let me write to him. Crazy, right?
I love it.
Would he ever reply to me? Yes, he did reply to me.
Wow.
It was a short message, but he wrote back and said, glad to hear from you, Philip. Sounds like a good offer. I'll keep you in mind.
Huh.
okay.
That is
Now,
cool.
is that synchronicity? I don't know. But I think that what happens in our life is that we get promptings.
Mhm.
We get a sense of, I think I need to do this.
Right.
And why does a 6.7 billion man have time to reply to this guy in
Yeah.
Singapore who just happens to write a letter?
Maybe he
So
knows about synchronicity.
what kind of letter was it? Digital, like an email?
Email.
Okay,
Email,
all right.
email, Rob.
And he
And then
responded to you.
he's continued to write to me since then.
Wow,
Huh.
that's good.
That is
But so-
cool.
Well,
so-
that's a pretty good story, but I think your one about John Denver is even better.
All right, I'll tell the John Denver story. I
We love your
worry that
stories.
I worry that your listeners might be bored with this. So
No.
there I was thinking about getting married to this gorgeous woman here in Singapore. God knows why I was thinking. And I went to a seminar, a personal development seminar, where the songs of John Denver were played loud and clear. And they were beautiful songs, a lot about meaning in life, but a lot of them about love. And literally they moved me to tears in terms of the emotions that they stimulated. And I ended that seminar saying, I got to ask this woman to marry me. She is the one, because of listening to John Denver. And so Friday evening here in Singapore, I said, now I just felt I want to say thank you to John Denver. So I kind of said, how do I do that? God knows. The following morning, Saturday morning, open the newspaper, John Denver in Singapore next week. Now, what are the chances? I mean, when synchronicity happens, when your response is, what are the chances?
Mhm.
That's an
What are the
indication.
odds?
What are the odds? That's the other one, Trish.
Yep.
That's an indication that synchronicity is around. So a friend of mine on a Saturday morning, I was just chatting with her. She'd been on the seminar, and I said, I'd really like to get hold of John Denver. Thought nothing more about it. Saturday afternoon, I get a phone call, and the woman said, "You don't know me, but I'm the sales manager at the hotel, Shangri-La Hotel here in Singapore. I believe you want to get hold of John Denver. He's staying at my hotel next week. If you send me a fax, then I'll see what I can do." I wrote a fax, sent it to her. She had the fax in her hand, and she said, "Now, how do I get hold of John Denver?" The lift opened, elevator, there was John Denver.
Wow.
Literally, as she said, "How do I get hold of John Denver?"
Delivered.
Mr. Denver, I have this letter from you for one of your fans. John Denver called me at home on the Sunday. Now,
Jeez.
Friday evening, I want to say thank you to John Denver. 48 hours later,
God.
he called me at home. So I take that as a synchronicity.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
kind of,
Yeah, that's
Definitely.
of course, I had to respond to it, but the woman from the hotel called me out of the blue and said, "You want to get hold of John Denver? He's staying with us next week. Send me a letter."
How did she know?
And, well,
How did
because
she-
her friend who I talked to in the morning
Okay.
had mentioned me
Uh-huh.
to her. My friend in the morning was the sales manager for another hotel,
Okay.
and she just happened to talk to her. I mean, yeah, that's an interesting question, Trish, but she must have been chatting to her friend,
Right.
and her friend mentioned it, and then the rest is history. And my wife said yes. My future wife said yes, because a lot of people say, "What happened?" Well, on the Monday, I asked, and we're still happily married.
I just love that
That's good.
story.
And not to beat the white elephant in Philadelphia over the head, but is that the difference when it has a direct impact on your life, or that rather than just there's something that you didn't expect to see, and there it is, and it gives you some kind of feeling that things are going to work out the way that you're hoping? Or does it require a response, a direct response? Is that the difference between a coincidence and a
It's a great
synchronicity?
question, John.
That is a good question.
It's a great question, and I don't think we know the answer. But all I know, John, now after many years of looking at this, is to say, if it's something which is out of the blue, and somehow it may be a direct answer to what it is you are wanting, or it may be something that tickles your fancy. You don't know why you're drawn to this thing, but you know you're drawn to it. And maybe later, do you find out the reason why you're drawn to it? And it can, John, it can either be something, I think, definitely that you know you want. So I began that personal development seminar knowing I wanted to make a decision about getting married, and the answer came. I've had many synchronicities, John, that happened to me, and I think, why the heck did that happen? I don't know why. And then it only becomes apparent later on what it was. So synchronicities happen to you, and then you think, why the heck did that happen? Does that answer, John?
And at the end of the day, I think it may be that I'm just drawn to Philadelphia. That is my new adopted town. So maybe it is that Philadelphia was just trying to pull me in, and
Says, "Move here, John."
yeah, and they didn't have to do that to get me there, but yeah,
John, you know the other connection. What are the first four letters of my name?
There you go. Yep.
All right.
I love it.
We could Philadelphia.
We could call you Philly. Yeah. So yeah.
You call me Philadelphia Phil.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying, folks, you see, you get my drift here. I want to take synchronicity out of this mystical that you've got to go and meditate for a year, and then it will come to you. All of these things are happening to us all the time, and it's a question of our head with logic we can decide stuff, or it's a question of intuition, synchronicity, heart, that we can also decide stuff. And they're crazy things. I mean, one of the ones I love most is the story of Anthony Hopkins. I don't know if you remember that one, Trish. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I
Anthony
think I do.
Anthony Hopkins was chosen to appear in a movie by George FIFA called The Girl from Petrova. And I'm just
Right.
reading for this.
Yeah.
And he wanted to get a copy of the book Girl from Petrovka to find out about his character.
Uh,
He looked all over London, couldn't find one. He went and sat on a park bench.
I love this story.
Next to him in a package on the park bench was the package which, when he opened it, he found it was the Girl from Petrovka. Isn't that incredible?
I mean, the odds of that happening are so incredible.
But the other incredible thing, Trish, was that in the book were all sorts of notes and annotations about the different people in the book. And he used it to prepare to appear in the movie. And when he appeared in the movie, the writer of the book said, "So what do you know about the character?" And he said, "Well, I've been actually looking at it in the book, because I've got this book with notes about the characters." The owner, the writer of the book said, "Where did you get that?" And it happened to be the writer's own copy, which he lost.
You gotta love it.
It was George Pfeiffer was his name. He said, "That's my book." And so Anthony Hopkins was able to return the book to its rightful owner. Now, isn't that an amazing story?
That's just a great story.
That's a good one. What are
That
the
really
chances?
is.
Yeah.
Now, Philip, okay, do you tell these kind of stories when you do your conferences?
Oh yeah. Yeah, because you've got to, I don't take, I mean, it's crazy to say, I mean, I've got a PhD in leadership and synchronicity, but I don't take primarily at the beginning an academic approach. I let people tell their stories, but I stimulate them by telling the stories that we've just this morning. Because my basic aim here, I mean, I'm going to be 75 this year. I feel I'm on the next stage of my life, and the next stage of my life is to share the thinking behind synchronicity with as many people as possible. Yes, I want it for my own success, but my primary reason is that I say to people, all around you are answers to questions that you have. And there is this thing called synchronicity. And you know, literally, you guys tell a lot of stories, which is why I like talking to you. The reason synchronicity exists and continues to be considered is because there are stories, like the one about Anthony Hopkins. That's an amazing story. There is no explanation about how that can happen that makes much sense until...
Yeah, there's no logical explanation to it.
Well, no, there is and there isn't. I mean, it's the one that I like to think of, Rob, as I've shared before, is I think somehow it's related to quantum mechanics.
I do too.
Quantum mechanics is the way that the world is organized. Most physicists now agree on that. Although some physicists say it doesn't apply to the large world, only to the small world. But most physicists will say that we are, unlike Newton, who said that we are matter and we are separate from each other, quantum physics says that we are energy and we are connected to each other.
Yeah.
So a lot of scientists don't like people saying that quantum physics explains synchronicity.
But it does.
Listen, until a better explanation comes up, if we are energetically connected as human beings, and we are energy, not matter, or more energy than we are matter, that's a great explanation of how synchronicities happen. I'm going with that one until somebody comes up with a better one.
And Anthony Hopkins had a need. You know, he wanted more information on the characters.
Now, and it's interesting, Trish, although I've said it's not just about spirit, I do notice that people who are spiritually inclined and open to, the mystery in the world. And Anthony Hopkins was definitely one of those.
Yeah.
Anthony Hopkins lately has been producing great statements and talks about the spiritual nature of life. So to me,
Yeah.
it's all there. What one happened to me recently, Trish, which I'm still struggling with. So let me share. Are you okay if I share another story?
Oh,
Sure,
definitely.
yes.
We love
which
your
I don't
stories.
have, which I don't have an answer to. Now I have a lovely, great nephew. He's my wife's niece's son. I don't know what that makes him to me, but he's a great, wonderful boy, and I love him dearly. In Singapore, we have a marshy wetland area, and in that wetland area, we have crocodiles. Not many people know this about Singapore. We have crocodiles. And I went there because I love going to Singapore's green spaces. And there's a crocodile in that area called tailless. So he's a 12-foot crocodile who got into a fight with another crocodile who bit his tail off.
Oh my God.
So he's called tailless. So I told my great nephew about this. He said, I want to see him. I want to see him. I want to see him. And so finally, 2 weeks ago, I got to take him to this area. We looked all over. We couldn't find tailless. And so as we're walking back to the parking area, I passed by 2 or 3 people in a group. And they were saying, yeah, we've just seen tailless. He's over there. I said, oh, you found tailless? Where is he? And the woman said to me, well, he's on the bridge and back over that side of the bridge. And then suddenly our husband looked at me and said, Philip.
That's weird.
Oh, and I looked at this guy, could not for the life of me remember him. But 2 days before, I'd been at a seminar and he was at the dinner table. I never spoke to him, but I gave people my card. He was at the same table for dinner.
Huh.
Now, he recognized me. He said, and then he explained who he was, and that was fine. So we went on our way.
Looking for tailless.
Looking for tailless. And then his wife came rushing to us again and said, he's here, follow me. So we followed her. There was tailless. Now, strange things, right? Then as we are driving out of the car park, I saw this couple and they were walking out of their car park. I thought they'd got a car. But as I drove away, I had this flash of intuition which says, turn round and see if you can give them a lift.
Huh.
So I turned around and got to where they were. They were at the bus stop, obviously waiting for a bus. I said, can I give you a lift? And they said, yeah, that would be great. Thank you. We get into the car and I said, so where do you live in Singapore? And he said, oh, we live Bull Key, which is the area near the river. I said, oh, whereabouts? And they said, we live in Riverwalk Apartments, which is exactly where I live.
Oh my God.
The view that you see in the background here is the view from Riverwalk Apartments. Now, there's only one residential area around. Every other area that you see in this picture is not residential.
Huh.
And so clearly these are unusual things. I saw, we hadn't seen Tailless the crocodile. She said, here's Tailless the crocodile. And then I say, intuitively, let me go. I turn my car around to go collect them. Turns out they live in the same place as me. So as a result of meeting them,
weird.
we found Tailless, and my great nephew was very happy. But it's clearly unusual, but I haven't, Trish, yet worked out what this was all about.
Yeah, that's a good question. Boy, that's a powerful one, though. That they end up living. I mean, okay, how big is this apartment building? How big is your apartment building? Is it hundreds of?
It's 26 stories with 4 apartments on each story. So
okay,
about
so
110. And then they've been there for 2 years. I've been there for 33 years. But you could have knocked me over with a feather when he suddenly said, and remember, I'm kind of now feeling this intuition that turn around and collect them. Now, why did I do that? God knows. But then when I said to him, "So where do you live?" "Oh, we live in
God.
Boat Key." I said, "Where?" "Riverwalk. You probably never heard of it." I said, "I live there."
Yeah. Well,
Oh,
So
wow.
all I'm saying is life is exciting and interesting, which is why I love the novels that both of you write, because it kind of puts synchronicity into stories.
So I think the meaning of that is that, we are all interconnected. And
Yeah.
so you meet
We're
this
all
person and
interconnected with
it just
tailless.
reinforces that concept
Yeah.
of the interconnection of everyone.
That's
So
that's a good point, Rob.
yeah,
That's a good point.
yeah.
And to me, one of the fundamentals of synchronicity is collective
Mhm.
unconscious, as Jung
Yeah,
said, is
yeah,
that and quantum entanglement says we are all connected. So yeah, maybe that's just a way now, Rob, of me just rejoicing that we
right.
are all interconnected, and
Yeah,
that it might become clearer what my connection with these two is further down the road.
yeah,
And it's weird
yeah.
that it was all connected through a tailless crocodile. That's
Yeah, I
what's
mean
so
that's the
interesting
thing.
about that.
Yeah.
It is amazing.
Unusual creature. Yeah. So Trish, don't you have some story about your sister going to Singapore and planning to meet?
Yeah, she was. I had written you, Philip, before my sister and
Yeah,
her
yeah.
husband were going to come to Singapore, and I was hoping the two of you could meet. And
But
you weren't.
we tried to meet,
I
we tried to meet,
know.
but it just turned out they didn't have time.
Yeah, they were visiting Neil's son and kids. But what's interesting is that after she passed away, which was in June of this year, I texted you, or I guess I emailed you and
Yeah,
told you that she had
you emailed
passed.
me. Yeah, you emailed
And
me.
and I mentioned that it was from strep. And
Yeah.
at the time you were sick. And as I described her symptoms, you realized that you might have strep. So you went back to the doctor, right?
Well, to step up a little bit, Trish. Obviously, you've been through this, and I'm so sorry for your sister's passing. But when you said to me it was strep, I'd got this really bad throat thing which I couldn't
Uh-huh.
get rid of. And I thought, oh God, this is maybe more serious than I thought. And I wasn't planning to go to the doctor. I was just waiting for
Right.
it to pass. But when you mentioned about your sister, then I went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "Yeah, this can be serious stuff." And as a result of that, I took the antibiotics necessary
Uh-huh.
to get.
So I kind
So
of
that,
feel like that was my sister's
yeah,
way of saying, because one of the things that I remember you said to her, we will meet again, or our lives will
I
cross
did,
again.
I
Yeah.
did,
And it
and
did.
that was kind of it. I mean,
Yeah.
you see, and this is. See, a lot of people will say, "Ah, that's just wishful thinking, blah 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 blah." But it all happens too much.
Yes, it
Mhm.
does.
It's not to have some significance. And
Yeah.
so I'll be forever grateful to your sister and your message, because who knows what might have happened.
Right.
I've not got the antibiotics to get,
And
rid
you'd been
of.
sick for a while, like for a week,
I'd been
wasn't it?
sick for 2 weeks,
Uh-huh.
Oh,
and it was kind of lingering, and so who knows? And so what it basically says to me is that somewhere, somehow, there is a supportive energy
Mm-hmm.
in the world that has our back.
Yep.
And,
I
and
agree.
I can't put my hand on my heart and say that's absolutely true. Um, but if we are all connected, if there is something called collective unconscious, if quantum entanglement actually does describe the reality of who we are, it means that we as human beings are 99% energy and not physical matter.
Uh-huh.
And if quantum entanglement leads us to know that this energy connects us, then to me that sounds like a great way of thinking about how we actually can live our lives. And
Yeah.
so that's where I like to come from, because once you get into too much esoteric, spiritual, new age stuff, a lot of people just turn off.
Yeah, that's true.
And
yeah,
and that's not what we want.
yeah.
Well,
So
it's funny when Rob and I first started writing about synchronicity back in the 2000, whatever it was. we used to go to the dog park with the dog we had then, and I would say to random people, "Hey, do you know what synchronicity is?" And people kind of give me a look like, "Huh?" And then I'd say, "Well, it's like meaningful coincidence." Oh, yeah. But now, if I ask people, this is 10, 15 years later, I ask people, "Do you know what synchronicity is?" "Oh, sure." So also people's ideas and their
Yeah,
evolution within
yeah,
themselves has
yeah.
changed.
Actually,
And
when
where I'm fascinated with it is obviously there's a lot written about individual lives,
Mhm.
uh, but it's kind of avoided in the organizational space.
Uh-huh.
But my thinking is that if it happens to us individually, and we know that, then when we go to work, it doesn't get switched off.
Uh-huh.
So I'm now my next book is called Team Synchronicity,
Oh, when's
and
that coming out?
when I've written it,
Okay.
yeah.
and I know I'm dealing with two great writers here, but I mean I've got a lot of it done. I mean literally, the 9 keys explains how it happens on an individual basis.
Mhm.
But what I've done with the team version, Trish, I've now got 7 factors
Oh, cool.
which actually describe how it may happen in teams.
Oh, neat.
Yeah.
Ah.
So, Philip, Trish mentioned saying that when we started writing about synchronicity, she said the 2000s, but actually, we
It was
started
before that.
writing about synchronicity in like 1985, shortly after,
Wow.
or 83 or 4,
We
when
got
we,
married in 83.
right after we first met. We tried to write a book about synchronicity, but we just didn't have enough experience and enough knowledge to write about it. So it happened that it was, I think, 2004 when we wrote
Mhm.
Secrets of Synchronicity. So we had it in our mind right away, and we're going to write this book. And I was thinking, well, if this book doesn't sell, I'll have to get another job. But no, I never did. We just kept writing more stuff, and
This
uh,
is the one, right?
that's it,
Yes.
right? Yeah,
I
that's what.
have in front of me. I have in front of me 70 books on synchronicity and related topics, and yours is, one of the best. And what I
Oh,
love
thank you.
about the two of you is that you don't just do it once; you've consistently
Yeah,
gone ahead, and explored it in
yeah,
all sorts of ways. So
right.
I think to me it keeps life exciting. It keeps us
Mhm.
really thinking about there are ways of answering issues, and one of the things, Lisa, you mentioned. Lisa, sorry, Trish.
That's
You,
okay. I'll be
I know
Lisa.
why I know why I'm saying Lisa. You'd mentioned one of the questions you sent to me, and thank you for your questions. I appear on a lot of podcasts, but nobody does it as thoroughly as you by sending me questions beforehand. It's so great. Question 6 you sent me, Trish. It seems that our own synchronicities are often more meaningful for us than anybody else might think. Do you think all synchronicities are subjective? Now, I have a story.
All right.
And this is a story that was repeated by our good friend Bernie Bateman,
Uh,
Right.
great researcher and great pioneer in this area. And he told my story on one of his podcasts, um, because I'd been listening to Bernie's story about a woman called Lisa Miller who
mhm.
appeared on his podcast. And it was all about getting pregnant
Huh.
and how she used synchronicity. And it's a fantastic story. Now, that happened on a Monday. I watched this on a Monday. Um, and it really hit me to such a powerful story. And I found Lisa's email and I wrote to her and said, Lisa, thank you. Your story was very inspiring and very moving. So it stayed with me.
Uh,
Now, Tuesday, I'm appearing on a podcast in the States on a show which is for facilitators. And so I do my 7 keys of synchronicity and give that for an hour. And then afterwards, I talk to the management team. And there were 7 people in the room where the podcast was taking place. And there was a couple sitting on the sofa, clearly in love. And so when it came to any questions, I said to them, I didn't wait for them to ask me a question.
Mm-hmm.
I actually said to the couple, I said, you two look very much in love and very happy with each other. Why was I drawn to them? I don't know. And I said, do you have any questions? And the guy said, well, we've got a crazy question and it's probably nothing to do with synchronicity, but we're trying to get pregnant. Do you know how synchronicity might relate to getting pregnant?
That's great.
Now, the day before, I'd got this fantastic story from Bernie's podcast about getting pregnant. Never heard that before. Moved me. 24 hours later, I know the reason why it moved me, because I'm able to say to this couple, I've got just the person for you. And they have since been in correspondence.
Lisa?
And she's helped them with the whole issue.
Oh, that's great.
Now, so when you say our synchronicities just for ourselves, and they're all subjective, I don't think so.
No, I don't either.
Because we can be conduits
Yeah.
for synchronicity to come to other people.
Yeah, Philip, with that story that you just told, would that relate to your your 9 keys, the heart-brain coherence? Would that fit with the
Well,
heart?
it does, but one key is key number 4, Rob, key number 5, which is servant citizenship.
Okay, yeah.
So when is synchronicity all to do with us? No, we can be
are
conduits for other people, as I
Right.
clearly was in this case.
Mhm.
But the brain heart coherence, Rob, may be linked to it, and we've kind of talked about it already. But when synchronicities happen, and this is related to one of your other questions, number 5, yeah, one of your 9 keys is set intention with heart brain coherence. Can you explain that? So, as much as we know, a lot of people, and especially Joe Dispenza talks about this, Dr. Joe Dispenza, the great spiritual thought leader, says that intention is set with the brain, meaning get very clear on what it is that you want.
Right.
And that's to do with the brain. Then imagine that you are achieving what it is that you want to achieve, and feel it with the full extent of your heart's feeling. So your brain has got the thought and the intention, your heart has got the feeling, and when both of those are strong, so what I say to people is when you're looking for something, when you want something, write it down so you're very clear about what it is, and then feel it. And so if our heart and our head are both in alignment or in coherence, as I say here, that can attract synchronicities to you.
That's
Yeah, I agree.
interesting.
That
Yeah.
makes sense,
good.
Rob?
Yeah. So I have another question. A lot of these questions we've already asked you in other interviews, but this is one that we have never asked you. So
Okay. Cool.
and I'm curious about this. How did you get into leadership training in the first place? You started in England, I understand. How old were you, and whatever got you into the idea that you could teach people about leadership?
God knows.
I love it.
I was a family therapist. So in 1972, I started work after university, training to be a family and marital therapist in London. And then after 8-9 years, I said, it's time to leave. Now I was offered jobs in local government, in the social services and health services, to be a supervisor, and I didn't want that. It didn't feel right. And I had this inkling that I wanted to go to Asia. And so I applied for 2 jobs, applied to the Peace Corps, equivalent of the Peace Corps in the UK is called VSO, Voluntary Service Overseas. I applied to them and they offered me 2 jobs. So I'm giving you an answer which is very hit and miss, Rob, but
Yeah.
just emerged. So the two jobs they offered me, one was in Papua New Guinea,
Wow.
one was in Sri Lanka.
Uh,
And the job in Sri Lanka was teaching leadership to the youth ministry officers. So,
ah,
because I'd been working with teenagers in family therapy in London, and I'd been supervising some students who were developing, so they thought that meant I might be good at leadership. And so
And you
they put
proved them right.
I put my name forward, and they accepted me.
wow,
Yeah, that's great.
that's a
So
cool story.
that's so in 1980, when I went to Sri Lanka, I was suddenly, from being a family therapist in London, I was suddenly now director of the Leadership Training Institute in Sri
Great
Lanka,
story.
Yeah,
developing
yeah.
leadership and training programs, and loved it. Then, when I was there, I obviously got to know different people in different organizations, and all of the expatriates used to say, you know, when I said, how long are you here for? They said, well, I'm supposed to be here for a year. And during that time, train a Sri Lankan to take over as leader in my post. But I can't find any Sri Lankans who are good at leadership. Now, obviously, that's nonsense because Sri Lanka's got great leaders.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I can precisely remember, Rob, I said, this is my life vocation.
Huh.
I'm
Yeah.
interested in culture. I'm interested in leadership. And when you're into intercultural leadership and teamwork, then you are into listening and understanding different cultures. So literally that was 1981.
Mhm.
Went back to the UK, got a job as a leader in a leadership training institute, and literally have been doing that ever since.
Wow, that's
Um,
cool.
and
Yeah, that's a
so
cool
That's
story.
great.
Yeah. So we're coming to the end of our hour, but I want to ask you one more question here. If that billionaire gets back to you and wants you to teach leadership training to football players, how do you do that?
I
I
have no
mean,
idea. I have no idea. But what I do know, listen, I was attracted to this guy, Kevin Nagel. If anybody's
Okay.
interested, he's actually owns the Sacramento football team and did great things with Sacramento football team, took them to the next division.
so you're talking
And
about soccer. Would you're talking about soccer in the States, right?
no, I won't disgrace the name of football by calling it soccer.
Yeah,
Not
but if it
non-American football.
not yeah, not American.
Yeah, it's soccer.
Yeah,
You know it as,
in
you
the
know it as soccer.
in
You know it
America
as
it's
soccer.
soccer. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but like America steals most things and changes it. So it's football. Listen, I was just attracted to this guy because he just bought my team, and his story.
Yeah.
By the way, go and look on YouTube for stories of how he bought Huddersfield.
Okay.
So
Uh-huh.
just search Kevin Nagel, Nagle, Huddersfield Town, and his story of how he bought Huddersfield is synchronicity by itself. It was all the
Huh.
quickest buy
Yeah.
ever. And he's such a fantastic person. He really, whenever do you see an owner of a football club regularly coming to the team, which is in
Yeah.
another country, and having tea with the fans?
That's
Yeah.
great.
And when you listen to him, he's such a smart guy, but so compassionate and so empathetic. And
Mhm.
so
Huh.
it's all began, Rob, with me just being attracted to this guy who's doing so many good things for my football team. And I've been, supporting them for 50 years. And so I was just driven to say, number one, thank you, Kevin, for
Uh-huh.
helping my team. Number two, I will give you free of charge any team services if you're ever interested.
That's great.
All
That's
I
Well,
was
keep us
doing was
posted.
all I was doing was following my intuition.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And he wrote back and said, and it wasn't long, but I mean, a guy, who's as busy as he is, what time does he have to answer people like me? So,
He makes
the
time.
fact that he answers already tells me and confirms what a great guy he is.
Uh-huh.
He just wrote and said, Dear Philip, thank you for your mail. It's a great offer and I'll keep it in mind.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
That's
And
good.
then he's
Okay.
written to me since about one or two other things.
And I have a question. When are you going to teach your leadership stuff online so I can come to your class?
Not doing that yet,
Okay.
but yeah, okay. I'm looking at it, and I'll let you know.
Okay.
I think I'm going to do more of it, Trish, when my Team Synchronicity book is written.
Book is out. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Good.
But sure, we'll do that. But you're
Okay.
welcome to Singapore anytime. And if you invite me, if you get a seminar going in the States, I'll come to the States and teach it.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, that'd be great.
Well,
Yeah.
and real quick before we close it out, American football. I have to screen share this just so folks can understand that this
My God.
that is what I saw.
Wow.
So now the wall across the street at the halftime
That's
of
a mind blow,
Alabama,
John.
that's
Alabama,
great, John.
Georgia. I'm just saying. It made me feel good. I thought we were gonna. I really thought we were going to win that game after I saw that. So,
But John, just a quick response to that, John.
Yep.
You know, we like to talk about synchronicity and its deepness and meaningfulness and all the rest of it. I find that synchronicity turns up, just like John has shown, in very simple little things. You're thinking of something, you look out, and there it is.
Right. Yeah.
So that speaks to this connection that we have. Great image there, John. Thank you.
yep, not a problem. All right. Yeah.
Now, Philip, tell
okay.
everybody where they can find you, your website, all the good stuff, your book.
PhilipMary.com.
Okay. And the 9 Keys of
PH,
Synchronicity.
One L in Philip. One L in Philip. And PhilipMary.com. You'll find a section of my website deals with 9 Keys of Synchronicity. Go there, write to me. Happy to hear from you.
Okay.
And always happy. You know, isn't it amazing, Trish, Rob? We have so much fun. I love
I really
talking.
do.
But even though this is the 4th time I have appeared, we have new stuff.
I know we do. We always do.
Yeah.
Which is
That's
good.
why it would be great for us, Rob, to hold a seminar and have Philip as our guest speaker.
Yeah.
You want to invite me? I will come.
Okay. Just have
Thank
to
you,
figure out the particulars.
Okay.
All right,
Enjoy
thank
your
you.
evening. I'll enjoy the rest of my day here in
Thanks so
Singapore.
much, Philip. It's
Okay,
always
Great,
a
thank
great
pleasure.
to talk to you as always. And listen to both of you. Thank you for your great contribution to this field. You keep on giving with all sorts of stuff. Your website is amazing, and I just want to say thank you for
Thank
all
you.
you've done for.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
We love
bye
ya.
now.
Thank you.